Brand. Interesting word to me, because I think that the longer we've done this, the more I've sort of discovered that it's a confusing word. Usually when an owner or a founder is moving past themselves being the main carrier of the message, I think that's when it starts to really become a conscious thought of what is brand, what is my brand, how can we be intentional about it, how do I make sure we're good stewards of it, how do I make sure that all of our team members are conscious of it and carry it forward in a way that is consistent. And so I think brand is this big umbrella that is an outward reflection of an inside reality. And that's really where I try to anchor in with people that are in the segment of clients that we're working with, mid-size emerging growth companies that are really trying to figure out how to scale. I think that that's the size of company that really need to define it better. And usually we're trying to tether it to culture. What is that inside reality that exists in the company that makes it special? And how can we reflect that outwardly so that it's consistent and the end user or the customer of our client is really experiencing the connection to what's special about that company. So I think the best thing that we do when we do it well is to ask great questions and really be in discovery mode. And so to facilitate a process that is about clarity, it's really understanding the genesis of the company, where the heart is in that company. Where's the story behind why it was so important to start, and then what made it successful? What are some of those guiding principles that haven't changed, or that are the non-negotiables, we like to call them, right? Is what is the purpose? Where are we headed? What's the vision? And then what are those shared beliefs or core values? And what's a way to connect our outward messaging to accurately reflect those things? The guiding principles should be a really good place to tether in to the value proposition to the marketplace, and then the outward storytelling of how that happens. And so the way that we really create a style for the brand to go forward is multifaceted, but it should always reflect this thing that is core, that its principles are not changing, so that style can show up in many, many ways. But if it's really anchored in the belief system inside the company, then it won't feel inauthentic. It won't feel disconnected, like, wow, I thought I was gonna get this thing by the perception that I got from the style that was portrayed. And then you go to make a purchase decision and it's a totally different experience. Something's not right. Somebody got really creative and really disconnected from the purpose of brand to reflect the core principles of a company and the core value that it's creating with its customers. And that takes a lot of thought and engineering to accomplish, where I believe that you do well just to define what is the core personality. I think you do even better when you start to tailor it towards the moments that you're hoping to make with a client in different places, whether that's when they first become a prospect, when they decide to buy, and then when you're asking them to become a brand evangelist with you, to go tell someone else about the experience that they've had with your company. You're probably going to use slightly different styles of communication in those pathways. You know, I think anywhere that you have communication happening, it's better to be intentional than to leave it to default. When you think about companies, I would believe that there are stages where it becomes critical that you start to design what it is that gets said, how it gets said, and the way that you want people to feel when they interact with your company or your organization. It can be intentional, and thereby means that you've done something to brand. And unfortunately, I think when people get so tunnel focused on doing the work, they miss opportunities to evolve the message or evolve the value proposition to the marketplace to be responsive to the conditions that exist. One of the most common things we've run across in our history of working with clients is to ask a simple question. Who is your core audience? Who is that sweet spot client that if you could have 100 more like this one, what would you describe about them? And that tends to really narrow focus in on the excuse that you would hear is typically like, well, everybody's my customer. Anybody who wants what we do, that's my customer. Well, yes, that's great, and we're not trying to exclude anyone by any means, but there's probably a uniqueness about how you do what you do that's a great fit for a person who values those things, or that way of thinking, or that approach to solving that problem. And when that's true, then you have this real natural alignment, or some sort of connection can be made by using a tone of voice or a style that they are really drawn to, whether that's color, sound, photography, videography, web design. It should really serve the customer in mind, as well as be an authentic reflection of the things that are important to the company. And if you can build that kind of clarity inside of a company about the kinds of customers that are the best aligned to the value that that company delivers, the practical handles to it are velocity and profitability and growth and momentum and service that goes through the roof. And when our clients really lean into that and they experience it, it's one of the greatest joys that we have, is to get to do that with them.